Hi, it's your boy Dozell Varner from Dialogue with Dozy. Al Green once said in one of his songs, "And this world keeps on turning." And speaking of keep on turning, the dialogue is innately aware of what happened in Memphis, what has been unraveled, the injustice. We're gonna be all over that. Tonight is a retro show. Actually centers around some of the injustices of Memphis. It's a show from a few weeks ago. It was a Dr. King show where we asked what the tenets of Dr. King's nonviolent protests still viable today. One of our guests, Mr. Quillie Jones, he actually marched with Dr. King, was injured in St. Augustine in that infamous trip, and Dr. A. Russell Awkard's with us tonight. Also, your boy KV stops by, and he... Hey, it's the 15th. It's Martin Luther King. It's the 16th of January. We are celebrating Dr. King's birthday on the Dialogue. Thank you for hopping on. Happy Martin Luther King birthday. Hopefully you didn't just take off, but you took on a responsibility. You've taken on more than a parade. You've taken on an act of service, an act of kindness, an act of lifting the last, the least, and the left out up from the bottom and made them, lifted them from the bottommost to the uttermost. We're so glad you joined us tonight. What a show we have tonight. We have two stalwarts. Dr. A. Russell Awkard, wise beyond his years. He's a veteran of the civil rights movement. He is fresh to us from the Breonna Taylor protest where he ministered to them. He'll talk about that. And also Mr. Quillie Jones. We had him last year during African American History Month. He is a bona fide civil rights leader. I just want you to hear his story later as he tells why he lives where he lives. Mr. Jones actually marched with Dr. King in St. Augustine. He's going to be coming to us by audio. Dr. Awkard is with us on camera. Doc, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing fine, Reverend Varner, and glad to be with you again.
We are absolutely blessed that you chose to be with us. Mr. Jones, how are you tonight?
Dr. Varner, I am thankful and blessed, and how are you and the family?
Blessed, sir. Thank you. Blessed. How is the weather in Jacksonville?
The Lord has given us some weather to kill germs.
Well put. Well put. Thank you, sir. Well, tonight's dialogue is, we're actually asking the question, are the tenets of the beloved community that Dr. King envisioned, that he dreamed about, that sunny August afternoon in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial, and he invested his life's energy and efforts to actualize it. We're asking, is it still viable? Is it still obtainable? Is it still, we know it's relevant. Can it still happen after what we've been doing the last 6 years or 7 years? Is this still viable? I just want to ask you, Dr. Awkard, just give us a brief portfolio of your civil rights activity, and when you finish, Mr. Jones, if you just step right in and do the same thing.
Well, thank you. I would just simply say, I don't describe a portfolio in civil rights, but I do attach my involvement to the ministry of the church. As a man of faith, I understand the role of the church and the role of the ministry to be involved with the issues that concern people, especially in their time of need. And in this particular area of concern, we're talking about the issues of poverty and racism primarily. And that's where I've been involved at different angles, at different times, in different ways. I've been able to connect and commit to seeking to lift our people in ways that are vitally important from time to time, that might be a different focus. But nevertheless, that's the way I would describe my involvement.
Just briefly describe your involvement. I know it's been a lifelong effort.
I thank the Lord for allowing us to be here and express to the audience what He has blessed and allowed us to do in our life. In 1960, the Lord blessed me to pray and ask Him, if you allow me to get involved, give you the praise, glory, and honor. And that's what I do. Each time I'm involved and each time I become engaged in any event. So I thank the Lord for thank the Lord for allowing us to be here. My background is based on having been involved in the civil rights movement, marching, sitting in, praying in, and weighing in. I march and sit in many times with Dr. King and without Dr. King, involved in youth programs in terms of marching and sitting in. Started when I was around 18 years of age, and now the Lord has blessed me to be 82. So the involvement has been over many, many years, and thanks to the Lord, He has continued to allow me to be involved. What I've seen has not been too impressive, but there's a lot of work need to be done. What I've seen is that we need to have more people of your interest, Doctor, and other interests of young adults to get involved and represent the Lord and represent His people in overcoming the evil that still exists. So as we go, we will talk about many of the things that we have an interest in and what we will continue trying to do. Thank you for the invite. I enjoyed it last year, and thank the Lord, we'll have a good one tonight.
Amen. Amen. I'm just impressed and grateful from the start, and we are unabashedly, Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright. His slogan was unashamedly black and unabashedly Christian. And that's what we're about tonight. We are unabashedly Christian in everything that we do. Dr. Awkard set the tone by reminding us that it emanates from Christ's church. And that's where we're going to be talking from. That's our point of reference in all of our activities and everything that we do as far as the King. Let me start off by just identifying. Dr. King said that the three evils that faced us, remember his era was the 60s primarily, the zenith was 63 through 68, and he identified the three evils as poverty, racism, and militarism. You know, the context of that era was the Vietnam War, where a lot of young men and a lot of our young men, or any of the poorest, went and many lost their lives over in Vietnam. Which or all three of these still relevant? Whoever wants to weigh in on that. The three, he identified them as poverty, racism, and militarism. Are they still relevant as points that need to be viewed as evils of the current society?
I would say yes, all three of them are still active. We have not overcome racism. We have not overcome the military problems, and we have not become segregation. What's interesting to me is that even in Florida was known to be a better state than many other states, but the same thing happens in Florida, happened in other states. As a matter of fact, Florida has become one of the states that does worse than any other state. I recall in the early 60s when the Lord allowed us to get involved, there was a governor by the name of Leroy Collins. Leroy Collins, the governor that we could sit and talk to and get some things committed to. Then there was another governor by the name of Sackcloth. He was reasonable. But today, the governor today is worse than George Wallace, George Patterson, because of the things that he has done, which make racism, segregation more relevant. Anytime you find a man that's trying to deny you the vote and take away the seats that the Lord bless you with to represent people, that person is very dangerous. Especially when his wife was ill with cancer. We all got together and prayed for the Lord to bless his wife and heal her. And as the Lord healed his wife, he became more dangerous. So to answer your question, I don't know whether we made progress, or if we have, how much. I just don't know. We have to sit back, evaluate and reevaluate and see where we are, for which we'll come. What comment I make?
Dr. Awkard, in our recent conversation, I was sharing with you the angst that we Floridians have about this current governor becoming more and more prominent on the national scene because of the very sentiments that Mr. Jones just expressed. We have it is certainly set our state back in the image of our state. What's your take on these three evils that Dr. King identified as three evils of society, American society?
Well, it seems to me to be obvious that we are still grappling with the issues that Dr. King focused on and raised his voice against poverty, racism, militarism. And I, because of our times, I sort of add a slash and the word crime to the category of militarism, because since we are not formally and officially at war, a lot of times we don't understand that we're still waging military endeavors, and our economy has historically been tied to militarism. But nevertheless, the issues and problems that we face and that are right up in our faces are the problems of crime, rape and terrorism, drugs, violence, and child abuse. Those kinds of issues would come under the category of militarism. But I think to better understand it and be clearer, I like to use the word crime. But these issues are still with us, and they're with us at varying degrees depending on where we live and what are the current issues in our various areas. But I think when you talk about poverty and racism, we're still dealing with those issues, and it manifests itself on every level of government, but also in the business world, and then in personal relationships.
Gentlemen, one of the reasons I was and by the way, I'm this is not my normal attire. I flip that cap back and wear something far more comfortable and leisurely, but out of respect to Dr. King, he felt that ministry was a formal affair, thus he wore black. And so out of respect to him, I'm dressed in that manner tonight. In our conversation, Dr. Arthur, you spoke of crime, and you just highlighted the crime issue in our community. I'd like to hear both of you guys weigh in on how responsible is government for our community being a battleground for crime, or a battleground is not, but just an environment of a high crime environment. We know Dr. King would definitely attack that, and I'm glad you brought that to the forefront, Dr. Awkard. What is the government's role, and what effect does it have in our current state of high crime rates in our community?
Well, the government is a very broad term because government affects so many different areas of our lives. We know about the three levels of government: the local, state, and federal. And then we have the different departments of government that make decisions and carry out policies. So it's very difficult to think in terms of our society without knowing that government is intricately involved in what happens. Government even extends into the area of education, for instance, because our government um, provides the funds for public education throughout the country, and the policies are still government policies, and so it's very difficult to not consider and understand the importance of government. But by the same token, there are roles for other sectors of our society as well. There's a role, for instance, for the church, for community organizations, and not the least of which, let's include the family as well.
Mr. Jones, you you live in Jacksonville, and of course, you know our family has been actually victimized by the violence there, um, and the gang violence and just overall violence amongst the youth. Um, how do you think Dr. King would view it, and it not being government's intervention to help curtail it more? That's a hard way I'm trying to say that.
Dr. King was a man of God, and Dr. King always took the position of not degrading and criticizing those of us who had some problems. His approach was one of, let's find out why, and let's find out if we can help find a mechanism to resolve it. And I have always admired that approach. I'm not really sure if he would depend on government. It's his approach was, let's come together and decide on why we are doing and why we aren't doing. I remember when we were in Montgomery, and we were talking about Vietnam, and he had a problem with Vietnam, and our boys going over there fighting and not getting a reward by coming back home, being able to eat and drink what we were entitled to. And when a Vietnamese person come over here and eat and drink wherever they chose to, and we couldn't. So he was a person that wanted to know why. And I have always taken a position through his teaching, as crime continues to accelerate, I wonder why. What is it happening into our children and our community? Is it that they are being fed something that we aren't knowledgeable of? Or they are being treated the way that we aren't knowledgeable? I think there's an answer that we have not researched and have not devoted the time to find out why. And I'm always curious of that. Politically, it's a way that other people's children are not being intimidated, not being facilitated when it comes to crime as ours are. And I always had a question about that, Pastor. If you're going to have crime, why you have one group being degraded more so than the other, when we should be treated alike? And at the same time, with all the killing in one race versus none or very little in another race, there's a reason for that. And I would think Dr. King would want to know, why is there's a reason for one and not the other? So I've taken that approach, and I think there's a form of politics involved that we have not taken a look at. If my child is blessed enough not to get in crime, what am I doing that the next child is not being blessed with? So I think we need to take a look at a lot of things before we begin to degrade our children versus the other people's children that's not being chastised and being criticized. I don't know if we've done enough to research it, or have we done enough to inquire as to what we should do. I don't know, but crime is something that I often think about. and also think about how Dr. King talked about the Vietnam War and how his distaste for that was. So I don't know. I haven't come up with nothing but.
So centering in on this crime issue, um, I came to Fort Lauderdale as an assistant pastor at the Mount Bethel Baptist Church, and one of the now Mount Bethel Ministries, and one of the things that drew me to make that drastic move was the fact that Dr. C.E. Glover had he has a human services agency, and at the time, the largest division of that agency was an initiative that was funded primarily through grants from the state of Florida, from the federal by way of the federal government. And there was a program called it was the TAC program. It was Teen Alliance with Clergy, and it was an intervention for young people. And Dr. Awkard, we kind of had this discussion the other night. It was an intervention with young people who had minimal or first time connections with the court. Their activities brought them in with the court. And that program had a huge success rate. With the economic downturn of 2008 and 9, I think, or actually it was kind of being phased out as far as grants prior to that, but that was just like the thing that killed it. Doc, what can we do as the church community to keep those kinds of in mentoring groups? Because yes, we do have the right to ask of government to do its part, but so much of it starts in our community. And so what can the church and what can we do to help in that process?
Well, I think it's a multi-pronged issue. And sometimes when you're working in one particular area, and most of us confine our efforts because of various limitations and focus in certain areas of activity. And when we do that, sometimes we can become rather disappointed when we don't get the support we would like to have, and when we see what's happening in other sectors. What I mean is that when you ask this question, sometimes the person has a theme of that it's a family problem. Then someone else will come back and say it's a poverty problem. And the next thing is that it's, let's say, unemployment or racism or systemic racism. And the truth of the matter is, they're all probably correct. So we're dealing with an issue that has permeated our entire society, and the disadvantages have been meted out on minorities, and that's not something that just happened in the recent years. It is historical and it is systemic. And the truth of the matter is, the progress that we see in the larger society, in the corporate world, is undergirded by government policies, government finance or government approved financing. And so we can't dismiss the role of government because otherwise we end up in the minority community doing what we describe from the biblical perspective as trying to make bricks without straw.
Doc, and I appreciate you keeping that focus and not letting government off the hook. I see KV is signed on. That is my brother, Doc, Kim Varner. K, what's up, man? No audio. You're muted.
Hello, Mr. Varner.
Get my mic right. Hey, what's going on, guys? Y'all doing all right?
Doing just fine.
Y'all hear me now?
Yes, sir. We got you.
Okay.
We got you. Kim, you're coming in at the right time. I see you representing Duval. Mr. Jones and Dr. Awkard are here, and we were just talking as we're heading into break. We were just talking about the role of government to curtail crime, primarily in our community. We were looking at the three evils that Dr. King identified as racism, poverty, and militarism. And Dr. King and Mr. Jones kind of attached crime in our community to it. I've explained reminded our audience that we, as a family, have been a victim of crime in the community. What in the community, what can happen to help curtail crime in our community to the level that we can kind of get back on an even keel? I know some of the things that you're doing. Share with us, and I know some of those tenants would work nationwide, not just Jacksonville or Fort Lauderdale. A lot of
First of all, Doc, how you doing tonight? Sorry for coming on late, man. I've been running up here and I'm beat. And I set the alarm to get up and punched it and went back to sleep. So, but I think one of the big things that works is being proactive instead of reactive. Here in Jacksonville, and Dozell, you already know this. I walk the streets 3 days a week. Guys know out there knew that I was a police officer. So when I first started walking the streets, they didn't want to have anything to do with me. Because of Desi, some of them knew me, and that was an advantage that I had. So I, it worked its way out. I started dealing with people and just walk the streets and talking to these guys, man. Tell them there's a better life out there. One thing a lot of people don't really think about, I think they realize it, but they don't think about it, is we're all products of our environment. I grew up in an environment with both parents. Dozell, you know this. We grew up in an environment with both parents. Daddy was a disciplinarian, mama being a school teacher. And they gave us the love and guidance that we needed. A lot of these guys that's grown up in the hood, they don't get that. They see their if they have a father, they and they have a relationship with them, they see them, possibly going to jail. They see their uncles, aunts, mothers going to jail. Jail is no big deal to them. It's nothing. How can I say it? It's no big deal to them because they're products of that environment. And all it takes is somebody to step in, show them some love, let them know that there's a better lifestyle out there. A lot of them. I've got kids that I mentor that have never left their neighborhood. I took one across the bridge one time. He was 12 years old. It was his first time crossing the bridge. And you would have thought that kid saw the second coming. I mean, the way he was carrying on in the back seat. Took one to Red Lobster one time. He took a group of kids to Red Lobster. One of the kids ordered crabs. And he was expecting, of course, the pot, what we refer to sometimes as a ghetto pot, with the corn, the eggs, the potatoes, everything in it, along with the crabs. They brought out those big crab legs to him, and he's like, I didn't order that. That ain't what I ordered. I said, man, this crabs you get here when you order crabs at this place. They don't carry the little blue crabs. So they're products of their environment. Once we try and get them to learn outside of their environment, they can see that there's a better world out there. They see that there's a world where you don't have to try and be hard all the time. You can be yourself and let your guard down, and you can enjoy life. And that's what's been working for me. Working with kids. Dozell, I deal with a lot of shooters. And those shooters, once I get to talking to them and show them that there's a better lifestyle out there, they'll put the guns down. I won't say they'll get rid of them, because that I don't know, but they'll put them down, and they really try and make the change and make that adaptation. I got 3 of them jobs at a construction company, guys that were, 2 of them were shooters. Got them jobs at a construction company. Now they're doing something positive, and they take their job very seriously. One of them's already a foreman. The other 2 are following his footsteps. One of them's already applied the skills and knowledge that he has, the leadership skills that he had in the streets. He's doing it at the job, and he's already been made a foreman. So, these guys, once you give them an opportunity, let them see that there's something better for them out there. And don't think that I'm soft on crime. I'm not soft on crime. If you did something, then you should pay your dues for what you did. But a lot of these guys will listen to you if you give them that opportunity, show them some love instead of jumping up, threatening them, or putting them in jail. Approach them with love. Let them know, hey man, it's a better lifestyle. And they adapt to it. A lot of them want that. A lot of them don't want to live the lifestyle that they're living. But once they start living it, and have offended other people, those people are going to come back on them. So they're stuck in that lifestyle now. So it just takes somebody to step to them and try and teach them a little bit different. That's my experience.
We're going to.
May I Yes, please.
Yes, so we're heading to a hard break, but go ahead in a minute and 50
Yeah,
seconds.
I can wait for you to return.
Okay.
You like me too.
All right, because I do want to pick back up on that in the context. Dr. Awkard, and we discussed just some of the things Kim was saying the other night. We're heading to break. We'll be right back. World.com. You see what they do for us every week here on the Dialogue, and also like Church Without Walls on Sundays. And they do website building. They'll produce you virtually. Whatever you need in this virtual era, don't hesitate to contact them. That's GoGigaWorld.com. They'll make you look good and make your work ultimate success. More GoGigaWorld.com. During this break, this is the time we usually have a little fun, and we do Are You Serious? Or Dang Dog, or we'll do a shout out. Tonight I want to do a quick review, quick men operative words, of Dr. King's 6 principles of nonviolence. As you know, that was an unpopular thing at the time of his death, even amongst our community. But I still grasp to it, and I just want to throw them out. I'll just throw the cover statement, and we won't go into the intricacies of it. I want to do these 6. Principle number 1, nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Principle 2, nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. Principle 3, nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice or evil, not people. I want to say that again. Nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice or evil, but not people. Principle number 4, nonviolence holds the unearned voluntary suffering, voluntary suffering for a just cause can educate and transform people and societies. That's a strong belief. Principle 5, nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. And number 6, principle 6, nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. Mr. Jones, you were going to elaborate.
Nonviolence. Let me share with you about nonviolence, then I'll come back to my comment about crime. If you recall, during our civil rights era, Dr. King was our leader, one of our leaders, the main leader. We talked about nonviolence to death. That was our philosophy and motto: nonviolence to death. And many times, Dr. King said, we got to embarrass the United States. The United States during that era was supposed to have been the leading country of the world. Every country was supposed to pat themselves after the United States of America. By we being nonviolent and it being shown nationally as to how they would treat us, beating us with axe hounds, beating us with water hose, putting water on us, pouring hot coffee down our back, pouring hot coffee in our face, arresting us, beating us with nightclubs. Ministers of other countries and presidents of other countries begin to question about the leadership and the character of the United States of America. Khrushchev was one of the leaders of Russia. Khrushchev and the United States had some bickering going back and forth. The United States was trying to preach to Khrushchev as to how they should treat their country. There was China. There was Germany, France, and the press was printing and showing the conditions that we were experiencing. then the leaders of other countries began to ask the leaders of this country, what are you preaching to us? Is this how you treat mankind? As they began to question the treatment of those of us that were in the movement, the Lord blessed be in the movement, then that's when the national government began to take a different look at what we were doing. President of the United States, the leadership of Congress, and then some state people had some concern because that's what the federal government would call, because a lot of states were getting their money from the federal government. The embarrassment that the country was experiencing was causing more problems than it was success. That's when things begin to break. When other countries begin to criticize America and begin to tell them, you talk out of both tongues of your mouth, you talk false tongue.
Wow.
That's when things begin to break for us. When I say break, that's when things begin to take a turn in terms of Congress taking a look at what could they do. And that's when Dr. King was invited to the White House. And as he was invited to the White House, there were statements made and requests was made, would you all stop demonstrating, stop sitting, and stop marching until he returned? And the response he gave was no. Nothing has been accomplished.
Wow.
So we continue. So that's part of the experiences that we went through. That's part of the reason why the America began to change. But America had gone back into its stage where it once was. And that's why, and I like what Officer Kim said about what can we do to help prevent crime. And the question I have, what are we doing? We are not doing that other people are doing, and their kids not reacting to violence the way as ours are. And Kim gave us an answer. The answer he gave us is exposure. Exposure is education.
Yes, sir.
Exposure is a dream.
Yes, sir.
So I think that may be a vehicle or an avenue that we may want to consider taking a position on.
Dr. Awkard, let me ask you, Mr. Jones just spoke of what made the protest successful. We know that you are just coming out of the Breonna Taylor movement, where you in your ministry, my ministry, I'll always be a member. You'll always be my pastor. I'll always be a member of New Zion. Tell us, what were some of the observations that you made from the protests there that helped to turn the tide? Mr. Jones used the term, things seem to break. What were some of the tenets of that that helped to make that to make Louisville a better place after that horrific tragedy?
Well, I think one of the things that helped was the vigilance of the protesters. Unlike many cities where they had police brutality and so forth, where they had press conferences and they'd have a demonstration or march, and then people would more or less go home. And then also in other cities, there was some tremendous damage done to the city, the facilities and government offices and businesses. But in Louisville, we didn't experience that kind of violence or destruction. But we were blessed with a very loyal core of demonstrators who stayed on the case, even when the government seemed to be turning a deaf ear or not bringing out the issues and executing and administering justice. However, in the various stages of that protest, through the months and months and months that it was continuing, there were signs that justice was prevailing, and it gave hope to those who were in the streets. And I think it also helped to open the eyes of people in the community and various sectors of the community not only in government, but also in the private sector. And together, there was some progress that was made and some justice that was administered. I don't think that we can be satisfied, but nevertheless, the justice that we look for comes, but it doesn't come all at once. We have to keep fighting, keep struggling, keep waging war against all of these inhuman kinds of policies, the treatment that our people live with day by day.
Kim, one of the things, Doc, I knew you you were right there at the fresh scenes. Um, we had identified just prior to you coming on the three evils that Dr. King identified, and one of them was poverty. And poverty has many manifestations, and I'm asking you because you're on that street, and man, you know, you're my brother, and I never want to be guilty of taking this for granted. I totally salute you, man, for what you do. On those streets, because he has identified poverty, and I'm with the voter registration piece that I do, I'm with the unhoused community often. He identifies poverty, and he dissects it by saying that it's a part of homelessness, unemployment, undereducation, slums, and all of those things. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but what in 2023 can be done to help us as a people overcome that? Minority people, poor people.
Well, first of all, I want to tag on to something that Rev mentioned about the consistency of the protesters, and that's what made their made people pay attention to them because they were persistent and consistent with what they were doing. The same thing happens in the community as far as trying to control crime. You can't go out there and talk to these guys one day out of the month and then not see your face for another month or two. That's why I do it 3 days a week, and I try and talk to the same guys, make sure that I'm still out there, that, hey man, what I'm trying to get you to buy into is real. If you'll just continue to listen to me with it, and that's it. You just got to keep selling it to them. Like I said, I do it 3 days a week, so consistency is very important. It's very, very important. I agree with what he said about that. And to answer your question, poverty is a big part. Anytime you're financially comfortable or financially able to pay your bills and keep living, some people live check to check, but at least they're able to get those bills paid. Anytime you're in that position, that makes your life easier right off the bat. So I mean, it's poverty is a big part of crime. It's a big part of people of not wanting education. I think not wanting to seek further education and all. I just think poverty is a big part of it. I agree with Dr. King on that.
I heard, and gentlemen, you all can all weigh in. I heard today, I think it was the Aubrey Melbourne show, where they spoke of Jesse Jackson. He took this phrase from Dr. King and really pushed it. It's called economic violence. He said that one of the reasons that a particular segment of our political society pushed nullifying the student loans is because of its crippling effect primarily on African American and poor people for many years, and it kept them from either by credit scores or just financial grip on their pocketbooks. It kept them from even thinking of a mortgage or being able to qualify or maintain a mortgage. What are some of the solutions economically that you gentlemen might would have for us in today's contemporary in our community that Dr. King would endorse?
I think Dr. King would fight for what the president is trying to do now, eliminate those loans. The loans are nothing but another part of slavery. Economics can become slavery because it can become very depressing. And when one is depressed, one doesn't think logically or operate logically. So that has a tendency to cause you problems. You see, the problem was during my era, there were very few of us in the college because of the financial burden our parents had. Then that was student loans became a part of it. Then once we got student loans, then we became more in debt. And that became a slavery to us. It meant that the Lord had blessed us with a degree, but after the degree, we couldn't operate financially because of the economics. So there's many ways that we are entangled with slavery. And what the president is trying to do is eliminate that problem. But if you would notice, there are congressional people in Washington. There are senators in Washington resent that being resolved. Now, vote will eliminate that. Research will eliminate that. And when I say research, we have to find out how much are they getting paid and who's fat in their pockets. I understand that very clearly because the Lord blessed me to be in government. I had a chance to work with Richard Nixon. And I had a chance to work with many mayors. So I understand the economics and where the bodies are buried. Who get what and when. We don't get that. And those of us who are in position do not help us get to that level.
Wow.
So there are many crippling stages we have to overcome poverty. And I was so happy to hear what Officer Varner was saying, how he spent time with those kids. And what the key is, what stick with me, was what he said when he put a kid in the back seat of that car and drove across that bridge.
Wow.
Seemed like that kid has seen another world.
Mm-hmm. That
changed his life altogether.
Dr. Awkard, I want to ask you, and then I'm going to ask him. I want to ask you, thank you, Mr. Jones. Dr. Awkard, I want to ask you, how do we combat that resistance that Mr. Jones just identified, the political resistance? How I don't want to say how do we combat, using the mentality of Dr. King, how do we educate those who oppose it to see the economic viability of us doing away with some of these impediments to the larger segments of society? And then I want to come back, Kim, and I want to ask you, how do we sell an education, whether it's formal academic education, or how do we sell going and getting a trade to our brothers and sisters on the street that you connect to all the time? Dr. Awkard?
I appreciate very much what your brother Kim told us about his personal involvement 3 days a week. And I'm sure it's making a difference in the lives of those that he sees on a regular basis. However, I think we need to also realize that there's a much larger population of young men and women who are not getting the advantages of that type of counsel and mentoring. And so the real need is for resources. And government is the best resource we have, because in terms of the private funding sources, that's mostly left up to the goodwill or the interest of the person who has the wealth. It is not, and sometimes that's self-aggrandizement because it's someone that they connect with, and there are some benefits from giving support, and I won't go into all that. But with the government, everyone should be able to access the resources. We pay the taxes. We should, however, the truth of the matter is the way the system is set up, it's built in that we're going to be the ones at the end of the line. Brother Jones just spoke about the fact that we get the opportunity to go to school, but we need financial aid. When we come out of school, we've got the education, but we're so laden with debt that we can't build a productive lifestyle for ourselves and for our families. And that's across the board. When we talk about the government as it relates to helping those who are unemployed, homeless, malnutrition, subject to malnutrition or illiterate, it's called, they want to call it socialism and communism. But the truth of the matter is everybody benefits from government resources.
Right.
And the COVID showed us all the people
Right.
who don't want government interference in their lives and this, that, and the other. None of them, I'm speaking very generally now, none of them turned down those checks.
That's right. That's right.
The businesses didn't turn them down. The families didn't turn them down.
Right.
The private organizations didn't turn them down. Even churches didn't turn it down. But because if we were talking just about private enterprise, the government would not have had to supplement life in the United States during the COVID. So no one ever accused that of being socialism. You see, so therefore, government is set up so that it helps different classes and categories of people in different ways. And the great advances of our society have come because of government's involvement and the authorization of government for entities to move forward. From the standpoint of whether it's giving land away or giving loans that don't have to be repaid, or whatever it is, it's a way to help move forward. And we are the ones that are on the last end of that. And we get the last of it, and the least of it. And then we're expected to perform miracles, and we do surprise many people with some of the advances we've made. But the truth of the matter is, when you don't have resources, you're extremely limited in what you can accomplish. Even when you're dealing with persons one-on-one, when they are out of your when they're out of your presence, then there are other forces that work against them in our communities, in the neighborhoods, and we've already talked about them and we know them. I think the real issue is, what shall we do? How shall we continue to help solve these problems and not just analyze them to death, but really come up with some solutions? And I think there's a lot going on in the communities that are trying to address the problems.
Dr. King referred to what you just identified as a paralysis of analysis.
Oh, yes, we know that.
Quillie, what say you about getting our brothers and sisters on the street interested in that better life?
First of all, I got to acknowledge Mr. Jones. I didn't speak to him when I came on the air. That's one of my heroes. So first of all, I got to say hello to my man, Mr. Jones. I didn't see his face, so I forgot he was on the phone. So, Mr. Jones, I hope you're doing fine, sir.
Honor to hear your voice.
Yes, sir. Secondly, I agree with what Reverend Awkard just was talking about, especially when he talked about the nutrition and all that. We got kids that go to school that don't even eat. And they get there, you go to their house, you look straight through to the back of the refrigerator. They go to school, they eat that little food at school, they come back home in the evenings, they don't have anything to eat. That's a big problem. A lot of people don't realize how big of a problem that is, but that's a huge problem when you don't have, you walk around, they're already broke, and then you're hungry on top of it. So that's a big problem. I think, for me to answer your question, Dozell, I think that the way that we get them interested and want to get their education and to get them interested and want to move forward out of the position that they're in, I think one of the things you just have to do, mentoring is a big part of it, because you take a kid and you show him other lifestyles, that'll make their appetite hungry to go after that lifestyle, or make their appetite, they'll let them know that there's other options out there. You don't just have to stay in the hood, sell drugs, or, do whatever you're doing, whatever hustle you got going on to make a living. There's a whole world out there. A lot of them don't get to see that world. We could talk to them about it, but when you show it to them, when they see it, they know they can be it. So um, I think it's very important that we expose them to as much as we can. I know you take kids on college trips all the time. Uh, when those kids go to those different schools and everything, and they see what's available out there, that whets their palate. They want to be a part of that. They know they can be a part of it now. They know it's not unreachable. So I mean, just taking them around and showing them different experiences that they're not used to seeing. Nobody's taking the time to show it to them. Show them different things and let them know, hey, you get your education, you can have this too. Uh, or if everybody's not built for school. So I always say, you show them a trade that they know they can go out and do it and actually manage that trade, and they can do it themselves. Just show it to them. Exposure is a big part of it to me.
Gentlemen, I cannot tell you how valuable tonight's dialogue has been. I'm just encouraged to know that at least we have maintained the tenets of Dr. King's. And the thing I like about it is that Dr. King was not a divisive person. His thing was about a tenet of inclusiveness. And I think we all know the wisdom of Dr. Awkard, the experience of Mr. Jones tells us that together we do better. Together we thrive better. So what we're going to do, we're up against a quick clock. I'm going to ask Mr. Jones to give us a quick story of one of his experiences with Dr. King. I want to ask Dr. Awkard to just give us a word of summary for tonight's dialogue. And Kim, I'm going to ask you to do As I See It for the both of us tonight. And afterwards, I'm going to do a short tribute to Dr. King. Mr. Jones.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
I last week we failed to do it, and I don't want to fail to do it this week. We want our listeners to be able to chime in if they have some comments or suggestions. And I know we on the clock right now, but if we have any listeners or that have any comments or suggestions they want to add to the show, please share them with us. And I'll read them out so everybody can hear, because we get great suggestions from them as well. So we don't want to leave them out. So
Toy did one.
okay.
And you were talking about exposure. She went to Tennessee State based on being exposed on a college tour, but she has one. And we have our YouTube family, which we are not able to see that, but they leave comments. Go ahead, Kim.
No, I'm done. Let Mr. Jones go ahead and speak. I just want to get that in.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
Is it on me?
Yes, sir. Just give one of your brief experiences during your tenure with Dr. King.
I always say exposure is education. Exposure is the change of life. I was blessed to work with Dr. King and some other civil rights leaders. By me seeing, that made me dream. And as I dreamed, I became, the Lord gave me strength. And I thank him every day for protecting me.
Yes.
I never forget the most frightening experience I had in my life. It's when I was in Jacksonville, and Dr. King had called one of his classmates, which his name was Emmanuel Eves. Emmanuel Eves was a lawyer. And he told Emmanuel Eves that he was in St. Augustine. And Emmanuel came and picked me up, and myself and Moses Davis, and said, Dr. King is in St. Augustine, let's ride down. As we entered the city limits of St. Augustine, there were state troopers on both sides of the road. We were riding in a beige station wagon. The tires on that station wagon looked like my hand. And I thank the Lord many days. If that tire had blown out, I would not be sitting here. The tension was just that strong. And as we entered St. Augustine, we met with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Haley, which was a dentist there who was over SCLC. Dr. King was at, I think it was the First Baptist Church in the inner city. I went to Dr. King's. I went to the dentist's office, talking to him, Dr. Haley. They went looking for Dr. King. But I wanted to get as part of the inner circle.
I'm not sure if it's just my mic, but did anybody else lose sound?
I lost the sound and
Okay.
also the screen for Reverend Varner.
Yes, sir, I did too. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just my mind acting up. I sent a message to the producer. Hopefully she'll, see if she can correct that. I think those are made up logged off. Doc, it's a pleasure meeting you, though, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, I'd just like to add one word to our discussion.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
And that is the importance of voting. We've seen it happen in Georgia, and I think if we want to see some more changes in progress, we've got to learn the importance of this political process and build up the voting mass in our communities.
I totally agree with you. We just had a big sheriff's race here in the city, and both candidates were both Black. One of them was Lakeisha Burton, and the other one was TK Waters. TK Waters ended up winning, but what do we do to get the people to respond and go to the polls? I mean, voting is so important. What do we do that election showed us that if people would have went to the polls, she possibly would have won. People did not go to the polls. What do we do to get them interested in going to the polls?
I would just say it's hard work. A lot of foot soldiers, door knockers, and personal direct conversations. It's a hard work because of our history, but it is so vitally important that it's worth the effort.
We did some of all that we did. We had vans available. We had 7 vans that were available. We went to the senior citizen homes and made sure they were, afforded rides to the polls. Word of mouth, knocked on doors. We did it for about 8 months prior to the election. We started a year early, but people just did not show up. It was the worst Democrat turnout ever in the city of Jacksonville, and people talk the talk on Facebook and everything else. They talk the talk, but they just didn't show up to vote. And it was discouraging because we thought that we was going to get her in there. So I was just wondering what your suggestion was. I appreciate you.
We have to keep at it, and at least if you have a good showing, even if you don't win the election, those who do win will realize that they've got to respond to those who voted for another candidate, because they are elected to represent the entire electorate and constituency. So it's very important to stay on the wall.
Yes.
Doc, thank you so much. KV, as I see it.
We end up losing Mr. Jones, the last part of his conversation. But as I see it, I just think that to make this ball, we got to keep this ball rolling. We can't get discouraged because of what we see. We have to continue boots on the ground. We have to be vigilant of what's going on around us so we can address those issues. Here in Florida, and those of you aware of this, our governor here has done a whole lot to knock our train off the track. He redistricted a lot of zones so they could, so the voting would go one way, would go their way. He's not a fan of teaching CRT. He's taking that out of the schools. We got to keep vigilant and make sure that if they're not going to teach in school, we got to make sure we're teaching our kids about slavery, about where we came from. We got to keep that ball rolling, and that's the only thing I can say about that. We can't get discouraged because of what's happening and with what the governor's doing. We got to keep doing it for ourselves and make sure the churches, the anytime we're speaking, anytime I'm speaking, we talk about different things. You know, we do the thing with dedication to community. So we travel the country with that. We just got to shed light on things that they're trying to put in the dark and keep it popping. That's how I see it.
Thanks, bro. Going to end tonight's show a little differently. My sincere appreciation to my dear friend, Mr. Quillie Jones. We love you and thank you so much, Mr. Jones. And
What for you?
bless you. Dr. Awkard, you are the best. I want to tell you when we sign off just how long we enjoyed speaking to each other the other night. KB, so glad you're here with us. I want to do this tribute to Dr. King. I used to do this as a kid. I actually knew his speeches. I'm gonna do a little piece and we're gonna call this "We're Looking for You" next Monday night on the Dialogue. Thank you, GoGigaCreation.com. You are the best. From his sermon, The Drum Major Instinct, Dr. King ended this two months before his very premature, before his death. And he said these words: "Every now and then, I guess we all think realistically about that day when we all will be victimized with what is life's final common denominator. That's something that we call death. We all think about it. Every now and then I think about my own death and I think about my own funeral. And I don't think of it in a morbid sense. And every now and then I ask myself, what is it that I would want said? And I leave the word with you this morning. If any of you are around when I meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. And every now and then I wonder what I would want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I'm a Nobel Peace Prize winner. That's not important. Tell them not to mention I have some 200 or 300 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like for someone to mention that day that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for someone to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I'd like for someone to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. And I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to be able to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to be able to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. Yes, that I was a drum major for righteousness. And all the other shallow things of this world will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I want to leave a committed life behind. And that's all I want to say. If I can help someone as I pass along, if I can cheer someone through a word or song, if I can show somebody they're traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian art, if I can bring salvation to a world once wrought, if I can spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain.